we also care about muscle protein breakdown. And there are a few studies that find that while you don't stimulate more muscle protein synthesis beyond 20 or 30 grams or 20 or 40 grams of protein, depending on whether you're at rest or after a serious training session, we see that muscle protein breakdown levels do increase past that point. Now, muscle protein breakdown levels, they don't change as much as muscle protein synthesis levels. Muscle protein synthesis levels are the principal driver of changes in muscle mass and total protein turnover and net balance levels. Why? Because it's much more efficient for the body to stop synthesizing new proteins than to change muscle protein breakdown levels. Basically, the body doesn't go about breaking down protein for no reason. Muscle protein breakdown is usually there because either it's really necessary to catabolize muscle tissue or it's part of muscle repair. You can think of this as like building a house. Building muscle is like building a house. When you want to add a balcony, for example, to your house, you can't just tack the balcony onto the house as is, right? You need to open the wall, create the door, maybe add some windows, maybe even break out the whole part if you want a nice open view, yada yada. So it's just like that with muscle growth. You can't just add a piece of muscle on top of it. You first need to remodel the tissue, and that involves some protein breakdown. So, long story short, muscle protein breakdown levels, they are not nearly as high as synthesis levels and they don't change as much. So the practical utility of this isn't major, but there is research indicating that there will be a net further increase in muscle growth potential even beyond 20 to 40 grams of protein per meal because of a further reduction in muscle protein breakdown, even when muscle protein synthesis is already pretty much maximized. So, theory aside, what do the actual data say? Well, we have a few studies on training frequency, and generally the trend is that we don't see these clear effects that you would expect based on the ceiling of muscle protein synthesis for muscle growth, for long-term muscle growth in studies. For example, one of the best and most interesting studies I think on this that we have is the Norwegian meal frequency project, where they had a group of trained lifters do a training program with either 3 or 6 meals per day, all else generally equal. I would say that there was a little bit of problem with the calorie control, which we'll get to in a moment, but overall they found that the 3-meal group had better gains than the 6-meal group. They were roughly equal with a trend towards better gains in 3 meals. That was probably because the 3-meal group had a slightly higher energy intake, but if we compare the research on protein intake to that of energy intake, we see that the effects of energy intake on muscle growth are very small, whereas the effects on protein intake are much clearer. So overall, I would say that this is pretty strong evidence that there are probably not massive benefits to consuming more than 3 meals per day, especially if you time your protein well, where you have most of your protein in the post-workout periods when the muscle full effect is delayed and you can have higher levels of muscle protein synthesis. So I think that basically sums up the whole practical application of this video.